Bernardo, you are well known for opposing the concept of AI consciousness. I'd like to know why.
I think we mistake a simulation for the thing simulated when it comes to consciousness, even though we don't make that mistake for anything else. For instance, I can run a accurate simulation of kidney function on my laptop at home or my computer on my desktop at home at the molecular level. Super accurate simulation of kidney function. But I would have no reason to think that when I run that simulation, my desktop would be on my desk, right? Because the simulation of kidney function does not have the causal powers of kidney function. For instance, another simulation, a simulation of a black hole. I can simulate a black hole very accurately on my desktop. It doesn't mean that when I run that simulation, I will be sucked in. But when it comes to consciousness, we think the desktop will be on the desk or will suck me in because we mistake the simulation for the thing simulated. Because we are so confused about consciousness, we lose our natural sense of plausibility.
So if under materialism, the entire nature of consciousness can ultimately be reduced to something having to do with the physics or biochemistry or neurophysiology, whatever level of our brains, I think you and I would agree that AI consciousness would be possible under materialism. Is that right or wrong?
Yes, but I think...
Because if you, under a technology, not what the guys in Silicon Valley say 20 years, 30 years from now, but 50,000 years from now, 100,000 years from now, under a super advanced technology, it would not be, AI would be possible in principle, however long the engineering would take.
Yes, and then I think it would look like organisms, artificial organisms.
Yeah, okay.
And then in that case, the quest for AI sentience would be one and the same with the quest for artificial abiogenesis, the creation of life from non-life. If you create an organism that metabolizes, I think it stands to reason it would be conscious.
Or making whatever the physical characteristics are, because if materialism is the real world, everything works by, at whatever level, and if you are able to recreate that, you can define it as an organism or anything else. It's fine.
Yeah, that's the principle of multi-instantiations. Like birds can fly, and airplanes are not birds, but airplanes can fly too.
Right.
There is nothing incoherent about it. I think the question is, do we have reasons to take this hypothesis seriously if the artificial construct in question is a silicon computer? I would say no, we have no reason to think a silicon computer.
Certainly, simulation is not reality. There's no doubt about that. But to create the reality, whatever it takes, and we don't know what it takes. I mean, even if you have a perfect connectome, every synapse and who goes to which, I mean, that's still many orders of magnitude too weak to be able to have it. But we're talking in principle. However, given an unlimited amount of engineering progress, can it work?
Yes, I mean, if you would be able to take individual molecules and 3D print them in a way that will look like biology, because nature is telling us that individual conscious agency correlates with biology. We don't have any other instance of that correlation in nature. So that's what we have reasons to believe correlates with sentience. So if a 3D printer can put molecule by molecule in the right place to create biology, then yes, it would be artificially conscious.
To me, there's no difference between the two. It's just a question of engineering and amount of time. As I said, I would be at the 100,000 years rather than 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think silicon computers will ever have private consciousness in their life.
Yeah,
no.
Okay, and that's right. But it's not an in-principle point. It's an engineering point.
In our lifetimes, the difference disappears.
In principle, extends well beyond your life and my life.
Look, Robert, I have a doctorate in computer engineering too. And by the way, I'm running an AI company right now, developing hardware for AI. Once you know down to the individual wire and gate how a computer works, you know that you can do all that in principle with pipes, water, and pressure valves.
Yeah, sure.
It would be the size of a moon, but you can do ChatGPT running on pipes, water, and pressure valves. Who would think that pipe, water, and pressure valves would become conscious if you just add a few more at some point.
Yeah.
It is a completely logical idea. Can I categorically refute it? No, but I can't categorically refute the flying spaghetti monster either. It's a question of what we have good reasons to entertain as a plausible hypothesis.
But under materialism, the consciousness would be the product of the physical world in some configuration of subatomic particles or
Yes.
quantum fields or something. And if you can learn to manipulate those in a way to reproduce it, you'd be able to do it. Can we do it in our lifetime? No. Can we do it, in my view, in 1,000 years? I doubt it.
But when we do it, it will look like wet biology.
Okay, whatever it looks like. Whatever it looks like.
Then we agree.
It doesn't have to look exactly like wet biology. It just has to have whatever, because it's computational functionalism. That it can be instantiated, because that's the materialist point of view. Now I want to go to under idealism. How does our conversation? So now materialism is off the table, and the metaphysical reality is idealism. How does the argument change, if at all?
So under analytic idealism, everything exists in a form of subjectivity that does not have spatial boundaries.
Right.
So if you take the unified field, that's the field of subjectivity of analytic idealism. So everything is in consciousness. That doesn't mean that everything is conscious in and of itself. It doesn't mean that a glass of water is conscious. In other words, that it has a private conscious point of view of its own. In the same sense that it doesn't seem that an individual neuron in your head has a private conscious point of view of its own. If it has, you have no access to it. There is something it is like to be Robert. There isn't something it is like to be a single neuron in Robert's head. In that same sense, under analytic idealism, there is something it is like to be the inanimate universe as a whole, but there isn't anything it is like to be a silicon computer or a glass of water or a rock or a moon in that inanimate universe. The rock, the glass of water, the computer, the moon exist in a field of subjectivity, but they don't have private subjectivity of their own, at least not necessarily.
So I think what I'm hearing is that your analysis of why AI consciousness is not doable in a practical sense for a very long time is the same if idealism and materialism doesn't. It's irrespective of the metaphysics, the fundamental metaphysics of idealism versus materialism.
Yeah, I'm very empirically driven. I take my hints from nature. And nature is showing me that I have good reasons to think that even amoeba have a private conscious point of view of their own. They build little shells for themselves out of mud particles to protect themselves. You know, they exhibit behavior that we associate with a private conscious point of view. So do paramecium and all life. But I don't think nature gives us any reason to think that a volcano has a private conscious point of view of its own.